Teacher, I have a question. Should I take IELTS or PTE in my country because I'm going to go back to my country for holidays to visit family, or should I just do the test here in Australia? That is a very good question, and you're not the only one thinking whether you should take it in Australia or if you take it back home. Now, a lot of the times, the reason this question comes up is because we want to get a higher score doing less effort. First of all, when it comes to taking the test in our country, why do people think that? I think the reason is simply because compared to when we were in our country versus how we feel now, maybe you're watching this and you are in Australia for some time already, you are deciding what test you should take, or maybe you simply feel more comfortable with English, right? Then what happens is people say, okay, look, if I compare how I spoke English before I went to Australia in my country versus how I speak now, if I go to my country now, I'm going to sound much better than other candidates. So that means that when I am getting assessed, I'm going to do better, right? Maybe, I don't know, that's the logic. And that's basically the reasoning behind this idea. But let me tell you my experience, because the reality is, it is really hard to prove this, but hopefully this video helps you clear or clarify this, I should say. Now, in my experience, before coming to Australia, when I took the test, I had an overall score of 6.5, so this is before Australia, and I did really well in the speaking section. Look, I got a 7, yeah, which, is not too bad considering my situation before I came to Australia. But then I remember that after being in Australia for a few years, like let's say after 5 years, I took the test again with 0 preparation, but I didn't take it in Australia, I took it in Japan. And that time in the speaking section, I got a 7.5. So, but there wasn't too much change. I'm just showing you this because technically speaking, if we go by that logic, basically I had a good level of English already, I lived in Australia for 5 years, I didn't prepare at all, but I felt very comfortable with my speaking skills. And then I went to Japan and I took the IELTS exam in Japan and I got this much. So does that answer the question, is it better to do it in your country or in Australia? And I think the short answer is not really. Now I'm going to switch into teacher mode and explain to you why. These exams are what we call standardized. So basically you shouldn't be getting a different exam depending on your location. Or even if you do get a different exam, it's not like your interview is going to be completely different. And at the end of the day, I would say that in both exams, but this is especially true in IELTS, the IELTS examiners in the writing section, this is just to name you one of many examples, they use a marking criteria. So it's not that they're going to look at your essay or they will listen to you and say, oh, this person sounds really fluent, these other people sound terrible, or they don't sound as good as this other candidate, and that is going to give you your score. It doesn't really work that way. There is a marking criteria, and then based on different aspects. So for example, things like your content, things like your content, things related to how you connect your ideas, how your ideas are connected. Of course, your pronunciation. And of course I'm gonna put here grammar and vocabulary. So you could have the same person giving the exact same answers in Australia and somewhere else, and technically speaking, based on this, they should have the same result. So the short answer is, it doesn't really matter where you take the test. If you are thinking, okay, Emilio, I'm going to go on holidays, and I'm thinking maybe I can do the test in my country because it will be easier, I really don't think it is easier. It will be a huge drama, it will be a big thing if it is easier to take these exams in a non-English speaking country. I don't really think that it is easier in our countries, because just based on this logic, to me, it makes no sense. Also, we looked at the series of IELTS versus PTE with each of the bands, and say, for example, with listening and reading, you get a block, you get a set of questions. So it is really strange that you're going to be getting less or more based from that sample of questions. Technically speaking, a person sitting in Venezuela, in Australia, in India, in Philippines, in Japan, it doesn't matter, in China, should have the same set of questions, or like the same type of mix, right, in terms of the difficulty. We talked about how IELTS in the listening section and in reading, they mix different types of questions. It's not all easy, it's not all difficult, it is a mix. PTE does that a lot. So I don't think that it is something that it's let's say, related to the location. It is true that sometimes, but this is another topic, it is true that there are some candidates who take an exam in their country and then they come to Australia and they struggle a bit, but there is a million reasons why that could happen. What I'm trying to say is a different example, which is people taking the test in their country, they get a score, they come to Australia and they realize that they're not at that level. Normally when that happens, it is usually because someone has memorized a template or memorized answers, and that doesn't happen too much with IELTS. This is usually more common with PTE or with exams where you're only assessed by a computer. But that, what I just told you, that's a completely different video. So to answer your question, should I take the test in Australia or should I take it back in my country? I would say to you, take it wherever you want, because technically speaking, the location doesn't make any difference. What will make a difference is your skills. You could be being a weak student or being a weak candidate in Australia is not going to make you great in your country for test preparation purposes. That will maybe be a thing, but it's more on day-to-day practice, you know? And what I mean by that is this. Let's imagine I take the IELTS or the PTE in Australia, and let's imagine that I get a really, really low score. I don't know what a really, really low score is. Let's say I get the equivalent of a 4 or a 4.5. A lot of my students, they aim for a 6, a 6.5, sometimes a 7, sometimes an 8, yeah? Or the equivalent in PTE, like a 50, 55, 60, 70, 79. But let's imagine that someone gets like a 40, yeah? Now, that person in Australia, based only on the test score, we could argue that that person is like a weaker candidate. But maybe, depending on where that person is from, like if I go to Venezuela today with an IELTS score of 4 in my listening, for example, or like an overall of 4, if I go to Venezuela, maybe in Venezuela compared to other people, maybe the majority of people don't get an average of 4, so maybe it's like, oh yes, I am better. But if I go and take the same exam in Venezuela, I should be getting the same score. That's why I'm not too worried when students ask me, oh, should I do it in my country? Should I do it back in Australia? The other problem we have is that in many cases, the price is about the same. So it's not like a money issue. Maybe if it is the same exam and it costs half the price, then I will be like, yeah, look, go ahead, do it in your country. But if that's not the case, then don't feel like you have to leave Australia to take the exam. The main focus and your focus should always be in improving your skills, in getting comfortable with the exam, in understanding the test. But again, the biggest thing the biggest indicator that will determine how well you do in your exam is not going to be the location. It's going to be how you prepare, it's going to be how good or how much practice you've had, how much have you improved your English skills, whether it is your first time or whether it is your second, third, fourth attempt. And what I would say to you is focus on improving your skills, because then you can go to the test, you pass it on the first go or second, and then all good. Now, if you stayed till the end of the video and you have any questions about IELTS and PTE, feel free to drop me a comment in the comment section down below, because this video came from you, came from a comment that a viewer made, and actually from a student as well. So I'm here to help you out when it comes to your preparation, when it comes to life in Australia. And last but not least, if you want to prepare for these exams and you want to basically, study with me, best way to do that is getting in touch with the link in the description. And if you're watching this going, Emilio, a lot of people tell me PTE is easier. Should I go and do PTE or maybe I should do IELTS? Don't worry, because I have this video for you where I answer that question for 2026. So I'll see you in this one. Thank you so much for watching this video. Obviously, subscribe to the channel and I'll see you on this video right here. Take care and bye for now.